everybody, and welcome to the breakout session titled Lowering the Challenge Threshold to Launch Career Mentorship Programs in Alberta. This session will look at the background of career mentorship for newcomers in Alberta, the challenges and opportunities for community-serving organizations to launch a mentorship program, and the benefits of career mentorship to retain newcomers. Participants will receive a brief overview of the Alberta Mentorship Program website and the freely available resources to support organizations interested in launching their own mentorship program for mentors and mentees. To host this session, we have with us Doug Piquette, the Executive Director of Edmonton Region Immigrant Employment Council, Bruce Randall, the Executive Director of Calgary Region Immigrant Employment Council, and Cheryl Whitelaw, Principal of Kind Power Consulting and Coaching. Just a reminder that we will have an ongoing presentation, and therefore we will take some Q&A during the end. If you have any questions, please feel free to send it via chat. And I would now like to pass it on to the speakers.
Thank you, Jean-V. My name is Doug Piquette, as Jean-V had mentioned, and I'll be the sort of first moderator for this session. Welcome everyone to Refresh and the Prairies Northern and Territory Small Centre Conference. We're really pleased and honored to be a part of this discussion and part of the conference. On behalf of my panel colleagues, yeah, we were, when we saw this opportunity, we thought this would be a great time for us to share some of the insights that we've made with a special project that we'd like to share with you today. So Cheryl Whitelaw is with Kind Power Coaching. I think you have the biographies of everyone in your kits. And Bruce Randall is the Executive Director with CRIEC. And we've spent probably all three of us together over 12 years working in the theme of mentorship. Cheryl formerly used to work with one of the colleges here in the city and was intimately involved with our career mentorship program in the past, and currently with our new rural project. And Bruce and I have been colleagues for like over 12 years, working on mentorship initiatives. And so again, pleased to be a part of this panel. Immigrant employment councils are in existence and across Canada from Vancouver to Halifax, and is a part of our network. Bruce and I have been communicating with them since day one when we first started our organizations, and we relied a lot on some of the best practices that were occurring across Canada, and certainly that collegial exchange of information was really helpful for us as we started our programs in Edmonton and Calgary. So essentially, immigrant employment councils work towards addressing some of the systemic barriers of many of the internationally educated professionals that were coming into some of the urban centers. And then we did that usually through mentorship programs or networking events and basically connecting employers with employees over these years. A lot of it is also based on a peer-to-peer relationship. So when we do mentorship programs, we work with accountants, engineers with engineers, and so on. Why the title, lowering the challenge lowering the challenge threshold to launch career mentorship programs in Alberta? It's wasn't designed to dumb down the process at all, or even a Cole's Notes, but approach. But we basically wanted to provide that transference of best practices to others. And we think, why reinvent the wheel? So some of these things, there still is a hard road in design and implementation of programs. But what we sort of discovered over the years of doing the programming work that we've done is by sharing information, and how we learned as well from others, is by sharing information, we might be able to become more effective, efficient, and informative, so that organizations or rural organizations or small centers can make better informed decisions on if they're considering doing mentorship. This would be helpful in avoiding some of the pitfalls, or maybe some of the sort of the goat trails that might occur. going back a little bit, Bruce and I had a dream years ago that we would work in doing something like this, a pan-Albertan approach, where we would take some of the experiences of our programs in Edmonton and Calgary and share them with others. We so believe in the mentorship concept and the salient, sort of outcomes that result from those relationships, that we really wanted to share it somehow. And we tried on a few different forays, a few different proposals, and weren't successful. But just about 2 years ago, we were successful in submitting an application to the government of Alberta, and with the idea of building an IT platform for rural or small center mentorship. So in a way of manifestation of some of our experiences and our best practices, but installed on an IT platform. And with that, we had 2 pilot communities that we were working with at the time, and still are, Fort McMurray and Lethbridge. And basically working with them, they helped to sort of inform the design of the website and the IT platform that we created. And now are using it as a tool for their mentorship programs in their individual communities. I don't know if anything else I wanted to add to that, but I think what we'll do is I'll hand it over to Bruce to talk a little bit about the vision of the Alberta Mentorship Program, which we've now called it. And Bruce, if you don't mind sharing with everybody a little bit about the vision.
Yeah, Doug, for whatever reason, my screen is frozen. I can't see the, are we on that slide? For whatever, yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, odd that I can't see it, but that's okay.
So it's advanced on my screen, but not on yours. Is that
yeah?
correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for whatever reason, I can't see it on my screen here. Is it possible to call it up? Okay, hold on. Okay, yeah, okay, good, odd. So I was in some cyberspace place that wasn't at all connected to where you guys are. So thanks very much for sharing this. Yeah, I mean, as Doug says, this was something that we had long thought about, and we wanted to sort of put some meat on the framework, but like everything, from whether it's good governance to good team building, what you want to look for is things that make some sense, and nothing says that then when you come to this idea of working with a governing document. And the governing document that we wanted to just review with you right now is sort of what's been the vision, what has really helped us really sort of figure things out as much as we can. We realize that we're working in Calgary, we're working in Edmonton, but our reach is purposefully across the province. And so what we wanted to do was really reach out to 3 things. And so our vision was to reduce the challenge, to start a career mentorship program, to take away that daunting feeling that it's too complex, it's too complicated, I'm not really sure what I'm in for. What we wanted to do was we wanted to, in essence, lower that particular threshold, make it far less daunting. So reducing whatever challenges to start a mentorship program. If the tools are in place, at least the framework of the tools, and we can then seek to customize them, it might be something that could be attractive to more communities and to more leaders. We wanted to support the culture of mentorship in Alberta. I think as Doug and I get to the stage in our careers where we're now focused on giving back, and it's something that we've been driven, as Doug says, since 2009, 2010, this idea of leading by example. So bringing a concept of mentoring to the idea of mentoring. And so we're wide open, we're willing to share. That starts with promoting and supporting this particular culture of what mentoring is all about, what it can be, particularly in terms of career path planning. And then we wanted to support mentors and mentees. It's something that we live and breathe every single day. And as we talk about this particular program, and Cheryl has set up a wonderful series of boot camps for us across Alberta for the last 2 or 3 months, and we talk about this stuff constantly. The passion that we bring to people to understand what mentoring can be and what it should be and what the roles of each one of the stakeholders play, and to do so in a very aspirational way. And that's a word that we'll circle back at the end of this presentation on. And so just generally supporting all the key components of a mentoring program.
Awesome, thanks, Bruce. I'm going to ask Cheryl to speak a little bit to about the project. Cheryl has been our project manager for this project over the last couple of years, and is an amazing sort of matriarch and caretaker of the operations of this project. And she's just going to lead us through some of the components that were key for making this project successful.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. It was really a privilege to be involved right from the first ideas in creating the proposal. And we were really clear at the earliest stage of wanting this to be a collaborative initiative. And so we looked at several ways to bring that collaboration into who was involved with the project. And so what you see here is a list of the active project team members who have been involved, including our funding partner, the Government of Alberta, really have been involved in contributing and shaping what we've developed. And so we're pulling from people across the province and from different niches of expertise, so that we could go beyond just making a website and really look at how we could use that kind of platform to incent the growth of career mentorship as a culture. And one of my favorite quotes, talks about, we can go fast if we go alone, but we can go farther together. And this has definitely been our experience, working together closely, with our pilot partners in the Northern YMCA and Fort McMurray and Lethbridge Family Services, but also from a principle of, not developing on behalf of others without those others being involved. And so if we just switch to the next slide, the next layer of collaboration that we built into the project was to have a stakeholder committee that met actively through the first year of the project and will continue with us through year 3, but to pull folks who are distributed in different parts of the province, but also who occupy a perspective and a place that bring together different networks of people, or even networks of networks. When you look at umbrella organizations like the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, we felt this was really important. We use them actively as an advisory committee, so bringing strategic questions to each meeting and really asking, what else should we consider, who else should be involved, so that we could enlarge on, a really solid core of expertise that Doug and Bruce bring from their own programs, but to really continue to ask the question of how do we build this out to make it more relevant for people across the province. And so maybe if we just advance to the next slide, and we can get into a little bit of the heart of the matter. This project was really initiated to look at reducing what we're calling challenge thresholds. And so one of the challenges that's at the heart of this project is, in our collective experience, career mentorship is more than just one more program. that it plays an integration function for people who are participating in it. And so we knew that we would need to help really capable, competent agencies who are already strong in offering programs to their immigrant clients to find ways to open up their mindset about what's a little bit different about this program. And so one of the things we found that was different is really needing to get into the minds of employers, who are often both the source of mentors as volunteers, but also that become community partners and champions and advocates of a career mentorship program. And so one of the challenges I think we foresaw for our pilot programs wanting to start a career mentorship program is that it's a bridging program, bringing together mentors and mentees. So it really asks those organizations to hold the territory on either side of the bridge. And we find that people are really strong in doing that with their immigrant clients that they serve, but may have growth needed to build those relationships with employers and businesses in their community. And so one of the things we plan for today is to really, ask Doug and Bruce to speak a little bit to how they see this happening in their own organizations, and to extend out, how we look to develop support to address this piece, not just for our pilot partners, but for everyone who can access and use the resources from this project. So I'll sort of restate the question to say, what have you noticed? What have you learned about this bridging reality of a career mentorship program, both for your participants, but also for you as organizations offering mentorship programming?
Yeah, I'll start with, if you don't mind, Bruce. Just one of the things, and it's something that Bruce always is, credo that he's always adhered to, is asking employers, what is the rock in your road? And I think what that question does, it's a provocative question, is basically aligning ourselves to a possible solution to employers. So essentially asking them, it's kind of like trying to get an assessment done or a gap analysis done. What's really blocking you from getting your work done? So that when we look at these kinds of partnerships with employers, what we're trying to do is helping them do their work. We also know, and we've known this for years, and what also motivates the mentees is that we're looking to integrate them into society, into their work. If there is that social element, that social benefit and good, we know that. But when we're talking to employers, we try to get inside of their mindset and what motivates them. We know that they are also community citizens themselves and are willing to participate and donate time, but they all work for businesses that have business outcomes. So by asking them the questions, what is the rock? What's getting in the way of you achieving the goals of your business? That helps us to align our program vision to the vision of the employers, and it makes it a lot easier to have that relationship, that collaboration or partnership, or even a champion, if you will, by just aligning to them, being empathetic to their needs. Bruce, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, it's great question, Cheryl, and thanks, Doug, for leading us off on that. So if you took that idea that Doug has, I remember was probably late 2010. We were about a year in to the mentoring program here at CRIEC in Calgary, and we were in meeting with an employer, and I felt for a moment that I was a salesman selling a program. And so I asked to be excused, and my colleague and I left the room, and we had a quick chat. came back in, and we realized that we're not selling anything. What we're trying to do, as Doug said, is really understand whatever predicament that the employer might find themselves in, or maybe it's a positive thing that they need to enhance their workforce. So, and then the mentoring program might be something that can help them bridge themselves to the future, to future success. And then sort of backing that up, the mentoring program could be a great bridge, not a bridging program as in a, you know, a sponsored program or some sort of a funded program. So not that term of bridging program, but the grander scheme of what bridging really means to do, as Cheryl had so beautifully put. You're that bridge in between the two pieces of land on either side. And so we began to realize that that mentoring is not transactional. And by that, we mean we don't have a program to sell. And so when we're working with rural communities in terms of what does mentoring mean for them, we're trying to sort of impart some of those, you know, some of that experience that, you know, you're not going to be walking into a local employer selling a program. Employers have their own issues and their own concerns, and none of them have to do with buying a mentoring program. However, if they have a workforce retention issue, if they have a workforce access issue, if they have a diversity and inclusion concern, mentoring is something that might well help the employer. If it helps the employer, then it's going to be a much easier road for an organization to work with an employer in terms of bringing in the mentoring program. And so the lessons that Doug and I learned was that mentoring is not transactional. As Cheryl said, it creates a bridge between A and B, and A and B is usually newcomer talent and what an employer needs. And so Doug and I grew big ears, and we got to listen to what employers are saying. We got a chance to listen to what mentees are saying, and then begin to sort of put the two and two together in terms of, and hopefully make 5 and not 4, but hopefully go one more in terms of securing the best mentors who are going to help mentees, ultimately going to help employers. And so that same concept, we were working with folks in Fort Mac and in Lethbridge and in our boot camps with folks from all over Alberta, reminding them that it's not just one more program, not just another tool. Instead, it can be something that can underpin, you know, a number of things that you're working on, particularly with employers. So not transactional, you're not selling something, you're using this mentoring program in a way that can help all of your stakeholders. And so with that in mind, Cheryl's right, it is really more than just one more program.
Great. Thanks, Bruce. I'm going to, and just I'm watching our time, I want to make sure that we have enough time for questions, but we're going to proceed to the next challenge.
Yeah.
Cheryl, did you want to introduce that?
Yeah. You know, the other thing that was crystal clear from the beginning for both Doug and Bruce is there was a balancing act that the AMP project had to hold, which is, you know, advance really good information about what career mentorship, what it can be, and to find a way to transfer, you know, lots of kinds of knowledge, you know, real practical tool-based, how do I do this? And more of the aspirational, conceptual, why are we doing this? What are we trying to achieve ultimately? But not wanting to impose a specific, this is how you do it model, because Calgary's situation is different than Edmonton's. You know, both of those situations are different than Fort McMurray and then Lethbridge, different than Medicine Hat, different than Lloydminster, and acknowledging that this kind of mentorship might even be focused more, say, on growing entrepreneurial expertise rather than career progression. And so we wanted to develop a really substantive, supportive leg up to cross the challenge threshold, but we needed to localize the toolkit that we were putting together. So this balancing act of paying forward you know, the tremendous experience in both these people in both of their organizations, and other sources, but not imposing, here's a 1, 2, 3 step how you do it, which, you know, frankly, at the beginning, we weren't really clear on how to verbalize that, you know, lots of discussions and lots of polishing for ourselves about the nature of that challenge, you know, how to support but not be prescriptive. And so I'm wondering if both of you could speak to, you know, what you found in your experience, because you walk the talk, you were mentors in the project to not just our pilot sites, but other communities that, you know, got early glimpses of this project and said, hey, you know, can you help us out? What did you find important to kind of support from that stance, when it would be much more simple just to say, do this, do ABC. So how did you, you know, walk the talk of mentorship from this kind of position?
I'll start. My background is in community economic development. I've worked in rural communities for a large part of my professional life, and so a part of my, you know, sort of credo and value-based sort of approach to these things is, especially living in rural communities, and, you know, the big city folks coming into the small towns and saying, hey, we've got these great programs for you, help us implement them. You know, has always kind of struck me as a bit, it sort of put my nose out of joint. So I was always, it was great that people were coming to help, but they always seemed to leave. And so part of, you know, my credo is like respecting the local knowledge and the local, you know, sort of assets that are there, and working with those communities and helping them design something that fits their needs, I think was always important. And so it's kind of, you know, somewhat karmic, somewhat strategic, you know, sort of, you know, what you put in, you get back. So our approach is also about sharing. So like whatever experiences we've had, we just know that it's been a great experience for us here in Edmonton. Is there anything in that experience that can lead to sort of inspiration or maybe a new idea or innovation? That's kind of been our approach. And we know that by giving that information and sharing the experience of a best practice, will also come back to us, because even throughout the experience that we've had with Lethbridge and Fort McMurray, we don't have prescriptions for them, and we're really clear about that. We're saying, you know, we're really interested in what, you know, innovations you're coming up with, and we've already been surprised by their approaches and responses to issues or problems that they've come up with, and then they've said, well, hey, Calgary, Edmonton, what do you guys suggest? And it's like, no, this is something we'll work on together. We don't have an answer for it, but we're curious as to how you want to approach it, and maybe we can feed into that solution at one point. And then I think the last point, the localizing the mentoring toolkit, I think that was just a no-brainer. We knew that whatever design input content that we would have in the mentoring toolkit would be informed by the two pilot communities. So, you know, I stacked as much information into that repository of information that we collected, but it was also informed by the experiences of the two pilot communities. And I would say that the mentorship program going forward could continually be this sort of iterative, you know, sort of repository. It will be fed by the people who use it, and not just the urban centers. You know, like I say, we were fortunate enough to have you know, the opportunity to build mentorship programs in our cities, and which is great. But I'm really curious to see what happens in small centers in rural communities. So that's Bruce.
Yeah, well said, Doug. CRIEC and ERIEC are facilitators of success. We're not the dictators of success. We don't define success. And so success really is the success ultimately of the newcomer professional or of the newcomer that our partners are working with, whether it be in Grand Prairie or Lethbridge or Fort Mac or Lloyd, high level. That's where success will be defined, will be informed, and will be carried out. And so to Doug's point, that's exactly it. I think both Doug and I come from that small town background, which I think befits what we tried to do with the AMP here. In fact, I didn't even grow up in a town. I grew up in northern New Brunswick. I like to say I grew up in the woods. I think my mom and dad would say, no, you actually grew up in a house. But in between the smell of the spruce and the salt, and it was on the Restigouche River. So the locals, we knew the land, we knew the forest, we knew the trees, we knew the water. God forbid somebody from Toronto come down and tell us how to run our business. And so, but that's the way that I think Doug and I have always approached this. When we first started talking about this 11 or 12 years ago, the whole idea was that we were to help facilitate success by others in these areas. And we had envisioned a local champion who was passionate about ensuring that the folks in his or her community had access to success. And so Doug and I thought, well, we can be the facilitators of that. And mentoring is such a beautiful tableau to be able to sort of paint what success could look like on top of that. And I think the fact that Doug and I were mentees many times in our career paths, and I would dare say we're probably still mentees today. We do a lot of mentoring as well. I think we understand the dynamic of what a mentoring program can be. We understand the need to be informed by location. And so what we bring is the ability to dream. And we keep coming back to that. We know there's nuts and bolts and all sorts of hardcore tools that mentoring is really all about. And come and look at our programs and you'll see great handbooks and great processes. But underlying all of that is the ability to allow people to dream. So we let mentees dream and mentors dream in the work that we do in Edmonton and Calgary. So we took that same attitude when we started talking to people across the province who were interested in having their own mentoring program or being able to tap into some of our expertise or experience. And so we wanted people to be able to dream about what this thing could be like in their own hometowns or in their own communities. And because we completely are respectful of that process, having grown up in small communities, I think that's something that we were really adamant about. And so success then informed, defined, and as executed at the local level. And so we understood what that meant. So that's probably, I think, the one thing, Doug and Cheryl, when I look back, I'm really proud that we were able to maintain that all the way through, and that we didn't have a Calgary or Edmonton view of what success could be. But I think, we're all like-minded, and I think I feel really good that we were able to bring that to the communities in which we find ourselves helping out.
And just want to add, just to give you a sense of, the sort of variety of opportunity, like the boot camps that we've offered in the past. And just recently, just to give you a sense of the non-prescriptive, sort of demand, I suppose, for what we're providing through these boot camps. In Lloydminster, for example, the Community Futures Group, which is a government-run organization that does community development as well as business development across Canada. And they were interested in some of the tips that we had for some of the pilot groups on how to maybe recruit employers or businesses for an entrepreneurial mentorship program that they're interested in. So totally out of, sort of the scope of what we do in terms of professional mentoring, but certainly a need in their communities. And I thought this is great because some of the actual toolkits or models could be adapted for other kinds of activities, and certainly immigrants and entrepreneurs in rural Canada is something that is a priority for the federal government as well as the provincial government. And so I just thought this to me says, it speaks volumes as to our approach, that it doesn't necessarily have to be a prescription. It could be, again, best practices that could be used in other realms. So I'm again noticing our time. I'm going to move on to this last slide, and just with regards to local mentorship champions and our AMP focus on a number of things. And I think those of you who are listening today, you've heard us talk a little bit about all of the 3 points, and I think we'll just quickly go over those, and I'll start off with the first one, removing rocks in the road. And I think again it goes back to being in touch with what's current, what are the current needs for, and I would say both sides of the equation, the employers and employees. We're starting to see some demands and needs even from an employee perspective, especially with our world has become more remote and virtual, and some of the rocks in those roads are certainly something we have to consider when we look at mentorship. As well as what's going on with the workforce, as well as the sectors that we're working in, and having an understanding of those gaps and issues. What are the rocks in the roads of employers? Cheryl, did you want to address the second one?
Yeah, some of the practical tools. We looked to develop a toolkit that both would support organizations to start up a program, and so developed a suite of tools, but package them through a startup guide so you can kind of review the landscape and then dive into what the particular focus you might feel you need, just as one way to provide flexible pathway through the materials while giving you an overview of what's there. But we've also developed with our pilot partners, what we call pilot tested tools to get started. So, everything from like intake forms or action plans that mentors and mentees can use. We've worked with our partners to articulate, whenever there was a gap, we filled it together. And so we have a version of those on the website. In almost all cases, they're available in 2 formats so that you can download the Word format and adjust it to fit your organization. But we really have had good feedback so far from folks who are using these tools. They will be free to use, while the website is up and running from here on out. And we are starting to see early interest from folks that aren't exactly focused on this, but they're wanting a mentor component for something that they're doing. And a lot of the core tools are just really helpful in how to organize that process. And then Thanks. I'll just hand it over to Bruce for the last point.
Yeah, and Bruce, I'm going to give you a minute and a half because there's still 5 minutes, I guess, left in our session, and we'll open up for questions. Sorry, Bruce.
No problem. So, if you've talked to employers, you understand where they're coming from. If you're working on your own localized toolkit, you've got the bells and whistles. And the underlying value in all of that is ensuring that you're not just running a mentoring machine, but you're actually helping people to dream. And it's interesting when you get into mentoring, you really realize that's where you're going. You're letting newcomer professionals re-envision where they want to go. You're allowing the local champion to envision a toolkit that can help everybody reach success. Keep it aspirational.
Thanks, Bruce. Our last slide, and I'm just going to take 30 seconds here. For those of you, we've got a call to action for anybody who's participating in this workshop. And I would ask you to please check out our website at www.albertamentorship.ca. As well, follow us on social media. We have been putting out regular, notifications on LinkedIn with regards to our workshops and community calls, and been really happy with the responses there. So thank you so much for listening to us this afternoon, and I guess we're open for some questions.
Hi, I actually have 2 questions that were submitted, so I'm just going to say those. The first one is, do you find that most employers that you partner with are larger organizations or corporations, or do you work with mostly smaller organizations?
Well, I'll take a stab at this one. I know that a lot of our major partnerships are larger organizations. So, you know, we worked with like the Telluses and Enbridges and Stantec's and so on. They're great partners to have and certainly help feed and help us develop our mentor pool. But then, you know, in our program, and we've been around for 12 years, we've probably got about 700 mentors that have participated in our program. And I would say that a big majority of them are not, they don't belong to the big corporations. They actually are inspired by mentorship on their own, and they work for smaller organizations. But they, you know, I would say that the partnerships, the larger organizations seem to get a lot of the profile, but we can't forget that a majority of our mentor pool comes from the small medium enterprise. Bruce?
Yeah, same thing here in Calgary. We know that SMEs, or small and medium-sized enterprises, drive about 85% of the market in terms of the economy in reality, and that probably matches up with our mentor base as well. So very similar to Doug, lots of our mentors are from the small and medium-sized enterprises. And so if you're looking to connect to mentors as part of a mentoring program and looking to connect with employers, SMEs play a huge role and always will.
The second question, John B?
Yes. So the second question is, in considering small centers that have a staff of 1 to 5 individuals, do you still think that this is something that can be replicated without that mass amount of resources and support that you have within your program?
I'll take the first stab at this. Yes, by all means. I mean, there was a point in time when Doug and I were running 2-people shops or 3-people shops. In fact, currently we've each got 5 or 6 employees or team members. Yeah, this could be done very easily at on a small scale size.
Yeah, I like, as Bruce said, when I started, it was myself, and it was it. And then we started to build, you know, a small team. We had an administrative assistant, and then we hired a mentorship sort of director. So it was 3 of us really at the beginning stages of something like this. I think you can operate. It could be a very modest program. I think you'd have to just adjust your outcomes, and I mean, by making one mentored match, I mean, and I think about the impact, and we get these emails constantly. I'm sure Bruce does too. We get emails of just like, you know, thanks to my mentor, I've been able to cross that bridge and be successful. And I think even, you know, some of the mentees are a bit surprised because they go, yeah, I'll do this mentorship thing. I think they kind of agree to it, and they're kind of overblown by the impact of that kind of relationship, that how it made a difference in their strategies on how to find work. So one mentored relationship in a small community can make a huge impact for that small community, for that local economy. And if you did 5 of them, that would even make a bigger impact. And if you did 10, that would be amazing. It would blow those communities out of the water, and you'd have these people who have come to Canada and now are anchored in your communities, and they're there to coach your kids soccer teams and swim teams and so on, and buy houses and buy cars, and now they're totally anchored in your communities. And so yes, you can do it.
Thank you for answering that. We did not have any other questions coming in, and we are also at the time, so good job with that. You really finished at the right time. I'd like to say thank you to all the presenters for such an insightful session. We really appreciate you taking out time and sharing all the information and resources. To all the attendees, thank you for being a part of this PNT Small Center virtual conference. A reminder that the recording of this session will be available to all of you. Please remember to tune